The first time I wasn't quite feeling it. Like second time I was enjoying some tequila, so there were more tears
Are you
falling.
crying?
There were more tears falling.
There's no crying in wrestling.
So
Hello. Welcome to What the Flicks podcast, episode 72. My name's Susan Ayers.
Patty Smith.
Lon Chima.
Jorge Sanchez.
Bob Nick Shields.
Okay, so let's see what our movies are this week.
Shouldn't
Okay.
they just be like 72A or something like that since we break them up into five?
I don't have a name. Yeah. Well, I see what you're saying.
72,
Yeah.
72.
But, okay.
Episode 1, episode 2. Okay.
Okay.
72.
Episode 72, chapter 1.
No,
Let the woman speak.
Okay.
The return of the podcast. The revenge of the sword.
Hello. So the movies this week are The Iron Claw, The Hitman, What You Wish For, The Boys in the Boat, and The Stuntman. So I think this week we're starting with you, George.
Wow, rough one. Okay, my movie. So my movie is The Iron Claw. It is a wrestling movie. It's about the Von Erich family. Funny enough, I was kind of big into wrestling when I was a teenager, but really from I'm not gonna say what age because I aged myself. But when I was a kid, preteen, whatever. So when I got into wrestling, the Kevin Von Erich I was aware of him as the Texas Tornado. This movie goes into his whole family, and stars Zac Efron as the main character, and he plays. Who does he play?
The Hulk.
Kevin Von Erich.
Kevin.
So, and we follow him. He's the one that we follow. We have to give some spoilers, but and it's basically the movie goes into the whole family history, how their father was a wrestler and how he gets them all to become wrestlers. It's four brothers. One of them is in college, and the other one is in high school, and the other two are already wrestling, or one is wrestling. So it's basically a family. It's a pretty tragic film because, if you know the story, the Von Erich is a pretty tragic story. They were inducted in the Hall of Fame in 2009, I think, in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was, but the only thing that really bothered me about the movie was because I did follow wrestling at that time, is how small these guys were. I know
They're tiny.
I mean, the character that Zac Efron is playing, he's a pretty big guy, 6'2", 220 pounds. But the one that really got me was the one that I used to follow, which is Kerry Von Erich, who was the Texas Tornado. That guy was huge. I was telling Susie, I showed a picture. He was like, steroid out. He was like massive. He was 6'2", just massive. Like
No, he
linebacker.
was 6'7".
Well, 6'7" is the younger one.
Okay.
So I'm seeing a whole bunch of, I get it, it's Hollywood, so a bunch of 5'6" guys, 5'7" maybe, playing 6'2" to 6'7" guys. But certain scenes, even though you can make believe, but certain scenes, there's certain places that you can feel their height. But aside from that part, that's what kind of threw me off from reality. I really actually did enjoy the movie. I liked Zac Efron's role, and it goes into how he's quite a father figure. He meets Susie's favorite actress. What's her face?
It's like
Lily,
Johnny.
Palmer?
No,
Lily
not
James.
her.
Lily James.
Who she just murdered in the last film we did, Baby Driver.
Yes.
So it's her again. So
right.
and but I thought the acting was solid. Everybody was great. It was really good actually. I wish they would have gotten more into, because it really goes in. Obviously, it makes sense. It goes into the personal life and all the tragedies with the family. I wish it would have also gone not necessarily the wrestling part, but more into because it would go into how it was different promotions everywhere, and how when Vince McMahon came in, how the WWF swallowed all of them.
Right.
I wish he would have gotten more into that part of it too.
I sort of agree. Yeah.
Give us more info of what's going on, because that was a huge thing. That's the only reason I say wrestling is a multi-billion thing now is because of Vince McMahon and what he did with that. But other than that, it was entertaining. I saw it twice. The first time I wasn't quite feeling it. Like Second time I was, enjoying some tequila, so there were more,
I was like, are
tears
you
rolling.
crying?
There were more tears rolling. It's
There's no
tequila.
crying in wrestling.
So,
Are you kidding? They were blubbering all over the place.
But it's a good movie. It's a good movie. I thought, I'm surprised that it wasn't mentioned at all in any award categories. Like Zac Efron wasn't mentioned or just anything, because it seemed that kind of solid, serious movie that should have been brought up in award shows. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
To me now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wrestling to me when I was young was what my mother and my stepfather wanted to watch when I wanted to watch something. So I was never crazy about it. This is back in the era of Antonino Rocca, Haystacks Calhoun, Bruno Sammartino. This was when wrestling on TV was cheesy and fun. Now it's just cheesy and overblown. But the saving grace of this movie to me, and I think the actors were all pretty good, but Holt McCallany, who played the father, was sensational.
He's the best.
He was sensational, and I'm glad that they finally gave this actor a chance to show what he can do, because he is in essence the villain of the piece. And I ended up in the movie just feeling so sorry for the guy. I mean, it was like I
For the father?
understood. Yeah, I kind of got where he was coming from.
I did too.
And I thought that it was like that's something the actor brings to it, because
He's fab. He's in Mindhunters. He's guy.
I know.
I know I love Mindhunter.
You know, I have to say that.
Yeah.
I never felt bad for the father at all, but I understood what he was doing. But to inflict that on your sons,
Yeah, no, he was nuts. He was absolutely nuts. He was mentally
I didn't
ill.
even think he was nuts.
But
That
I
would
mean,
have been a good excuse.
but would he have been better? Was he a better parent than the mother? Because that was who was Maura Tierney, I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
She was terrific in it too. I mean, the actors were all. I mean,
Yeah.
the younger
chosen.
actors, I just didn't get it that much. But the two parents were wonderful. And Zac Efron, I would not have known it was him, and if I
He
didn't
looked
know
so
going in,
freaky.
because he, like I say, he looked like the Hulk,
He didn't. Yeah, he didn't have any
Really
height.
bulked up.
not
It was
David
all
Banner, the Hulk.
sideways.
Yeah. So anyway, it's like I'm betwixt and between, but there was enough in it that I could say it's the second best movie of the five.
Well, surprisingly enough, I like this movie. I actually saved it to last. I was telling him, okay, I got to watch a wrestling movie. So I'll watch a wrestling movie, and my favorite female actress popped up, which was like, oh no, not her too.
Just got over
Right?
this because it's black in your face.
Oh, well, sometimes that's a good thing.
So put it up closer, George.
I do think it was an interesting time because, interesting times create interesting stories. Like the father comes from a time when, what you're talking about, when wrestling was like, kind of like George says, like it was a bunch of little, like a circus. And each little thing, they went from town to town to town in North America, and basically it. And it was also changing into the Ed McMahon.
Vince
McMahon.
McMahon.
Vince
Yeah.
McMahon. Different guy. It was like Vince McMahon when they were starting to become I guess the
televised, more,
WWF.
Organized,
or-
basically.
Organized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the father really couldn't get the transition. He really didn't understand that something different was happening. George also said to me that the father was supposed to be the kind of like problematic in the story. I didn't find him problematic at all. I thought he was
Like a domineering father movie.
Oh,
no,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
think he
Very
was.
much
I
so.
think he was
Yeah.
like a working class guy. This is his life. This is what he did. This is what he knows. And so he was trying to get them to,
to do his
Right.
dream.
survive.
Right.
No, to do
No,
his
to
dream.
instill into his sons the
Well, that's
exact
a-
same thing about wrestling and
Yeah, but you know what?
wrestling
But-
can make money and you
but-
can do things.
But
yeah.
it was basically
do
to survive. And they're what's it called? The Greatest Generation? It's like they went through depression. They went through a Second World War. They don't see it as tough. You know what I mean? You can't look at these people now with us and go back to them. They're like just different
You
stuff.
know what line best describes the greatest generation? I ain't got time to bleed.
Who's that?
Huh?
Some soldier.
That's funny enough. That's another wrestler. That was from the Predator.
Okay.
What's his face?
Yes, Jesse Ventura.
Jesse Ventura. And the
Yeah.
Predator, I ain't got time to bleed.
Okay. The family was an amazing wrestling dynasty, and like most dynasties, there's really some interesting stories. You know what I mean? It's not, but I thought they were a great family. I mean, and I thought that is it Kevin? Is it Kevin?
Zac Efron?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
one?
he's Kevin. He's
Yeah,
Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Kevin, he was really an interesting character because, in a way, he was the mother of the group. He was the one who kind of took on the nurturing, and
Oh, the older brother.
Yes.
Right.
He was the one, and I was saying to George, it was like a testosterone patriarch thing going on one side, and the mother, was just zoned out, right? And he was the one who actually loved the brothers, wanted to stay together. He was into it, and he was like the nurturer in the family. That's why I was saying, wow, is I was saying to George, is he crying? It's like, and yeah, I just think that it was a different time. It was a transitional time. This is an amazing story. I mean, the family is an amazing family, and they seem very happy now. They all do it. I'm sure all the kids do it too.
And incidentally,
I'm
there's
biting at the
and-
bit, Sue.
and also
Okay,
there's-
go
Well, I'm
ahead.
gonna say
Take
later,
your
but there's
bit
also-
off.
Well,
There was another brother that did not have in the movie at all. That was
The Lance one, the one that was
Died?
not a Von Erich,
yeah, did he die?
pretended to
Might have
be him.
yeah, might have been
Yeah.
but also that
Okay.
shot himself.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's two brothers that shot themselves, and only one that was shot.
Yeah, that tells you how healthy that family is. Okay. I knew going in this was going to be a super sad movie, and it totally was. I couldn't get over Zac Efron because he looks so freaky.
Well, they look like if you see the original family, even though they're too short,
Right.
they look like the family.
Yeah, like
He
actually-
looks so weird.
they
That's
look-
how he looks.
Well-
That wrestler.
Anyway, getting to the family dynamics. The brothers had great relationships with each other. I consider them the family. The father, one of my favorite actors, he gives them lots of love, but he's got a message. And that message is ironclad. You know what I mean? It's like,
No, that's who he was as a.
you do it
as a
this way,
wrestler.
my way, and that's it. Because he wants them, without him, I'm sure knowing it, to live out his dream. And he never, ever delves into what they want. I think the one most effective was Zac Efron's. Well, probably the two killed.
He was
who
into
killed
it.
themselves.
Exactly. I was gonna say,
Zac
definitely.
Efron was into it, and
Yeah,
he was
but
actually very successful.
He was very into his dad. It seemed to me all the time he was trying to please his
So
father.
that wanted that title. That's because
Aren't
he
we
was
all just
he
trying
was
to
denied
please our
the
father?
world title.
What?
He was denied the world title like I was Tenisusi. It's not like, it's scripted. But if you are a great actor, the audience reacts to you, they will script it that you win the title. So, and he never got it, so they never scripted for him to win the title. So he was upset about that. So he wanted one of his sons to bring home the title, which means they have to write the wrestling script
Right.
that person wins.
Right.
So unfortunately for Zac, that character, he wasn't as
Oh, he got
wasn't
passed over all the time.
much as his brother. His other brother was more like,
Right.
so the father was
Charismatic,
Yeah,
Yeah, he was.
But also younger and upcoming. That like you
and he
said,
was
had more of a
verbal.
fan
He was
base.
verbal.
Right,
Whereas
exactly.
whereas
Yeah.
Kevin really wasn't a
No.
good speaker, a public speaker.
Yeah, he didn't seem to have a clue, like the business part of it. He had this dream, his father's dream. I felt he wanted to please his father so badly.
Yes, very
And
much so.
he kept getting rejected to do the thing that he thinks will get his father's
But he seems
approval.
okay with it. He seems to roll with it.
Oh God, no! Watch that movie again. It was painful to watch,
Actually,
but worth watching.
okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, for me personally, it's like I sort of knew of the Kevin because as I was telling Bob on the ride over, it's like the only reason I know him is because they moved to Hawaii.
Really?
So that's why I think they opened like a restaurant and everything.
The-
In fact, if you look at that last picture,
Yeah.
I said that is not Texas, that's Kauai,
Ah.
where they moved. Right?
Ah,
The family, because I think the only thing you got to see is that the fact that the Lily James character comes into play is the fact that he probably did have a normal life because he had a relationship and then he started having kids. So he
Right.
started to like have roots in a way.
Right.
Where his other brothers never seemed to have that. And I think that's because of, like you guys said, was the parenting. His father was definitely driven and wanted to see a dynasty being built because he owned, that what is it? The
Franchise. Not
I think it was
franchise.
the WCCW, and then it became the WCWA. The World
Why
Class
not?
Champion Wrestling stuff. But they're right, and that was a regional thing in Texas, right? And then and like you said, every state sort of had. I know in Hawaii, that's when I got into wrestling in the '60s. I would watch the wrestlers, but they were mostly sort of Asian or Samoan. They were you saw some white wrestlers, but mostly it was all locals.
Right.
And so everyone could like identify and be with them. And that's what they did for Texas. That's what I think you really see in the movie that they brought. My thing was I did know that some of them had died and that two of them at least committed suicide. I thought all of them committed suicide for some reason. I don't know why.
They should have, the poor babies. I felt
Well,
bad for them.
Well, the one was like had a huge drug problem, and then he lost, whatever what happened
Yeah,
to
that's
him.
not a well-adjusted family.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why he killed himself, not because of his father.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One leads
And
to the other.
they had the first one that was died when he was like, only like 11.
Right.
But it's just amazing that I thought, okay, they're gonna do a movie about this. It was written and directed by Sean Durkin, so I give it to that because I think he probably was influenced by watching these kids.
But what else has he done?
No, I don't know. He's He's from Texas, so I'm assuming he's just sort of somebody who just came in and said, "Oh, I remember these guys," and you could tell that he sort of admired them, though, or he I don't want to say worship them, but he does see them as heroes to
Right.
Texas, for example, just
Okay.
Texas alone. But what happened in the World Wrestling is what I think most people know because, like you said, some of these were championship wrestlers who were named people, and then they're dying. So it's just sort of odd, but I thought it was an okay movie. I didn't really get into it as much. I did, again, surprised by people like Lily James and that Harris Dickinson, being British. It's like, I bought it completely. They're
Who was
American.
Harris Dickinson?
Harris Dickinson, he's the one who played, which character he plays? He played the David Von Erickson. He was one of the younger ones too. And
The musician? He's the one who wanted to be a musician?
oh, I thought that was the youngest son. I thought that
Wasn't
was
his name
Samson.
David?
Wasn't it Samson that was it? See, that's how I mean. I got after a while. It's like I'm not paying attention anymore to who these people are anymore.
Well, Jojo, no. Which one was the youngest
Was
one?
The
David?
youngest one. Yeah,
He
that
was the
that-
third oldest. They said the third oldest.
Wasn't he
son,
the
so.
musician one?
third oldest would be the tallest one. The one supposed to be
Right.
6'7".
Oh,
He
yeah,
was
that-
the one who died
Who
in
was very-
Japan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that one, right? Because he was in the Kingsman, and he was in that Triangle of Sadness. He's the one who played the model. I don't know if you remember that actor, right?
No.
So I was sort of surprised. It's like, wow, he plays American really well.
Well,
Anyway,
the English
They all do
that.
now.
Yeah, they do it
Seemingly.
very well.
they crossed the thing, but
They
I will
used to
say
not be
this,
able to do it at all, and now all of a sudden they can do it better than Americans.
And so I don't know what to say about that, except that it is sort of an interesting story. I would encourage to see it, and I agree with all of you that Zac Efron really is. This is a really powerhouse performance. I will give him that. And as you said, Holt, I think, is also, and Maura Tierney. But they played such, parents of that era. Because I will say this, because as much as you can see the conflict with the father and the sons happening, and it's like, okay, Dad, the mother, it's like, at one point, Zac Efron's character goes to the mother. I said, you have to tell Dad to tell him to be easier on Kev or whatever. Or who was it? I can't even remember which son.
One of them.
Michael. But then it's like, no. She said no. And I realized, oh, no, that's right. A wife at that time period, and even though they're being liberated by the 70s, she's like, no. She knew what her husband did. She knew what he wants. So she was going to go whatever he wants. And there's a great scene I think she has is when she has to attend one of their funerals, and then Lily James has to sort of help her. It's like, yeah, see, she's looking back and thinking maybe I didn't make the right decisions, and not even saying that, just her reaction and the way she's behaving. You can tell
Right.
that she's really going through something really horrible now as a mother. Period.
Right.
So things like that make this movie, I think, really sort of just, it makes it entertaining and touching and makes it for good drama.
For me, it was
Yes.
kind of interesting because it was an all-boy family. So
Right.
I really feel that kind of like
Testosterone
all that
city.
Right.
testosterone going on there. It's kind of like, and funny enough, and I think there was a lot of steroid use going on at that
Oh
time
yeah, very
too,
much so.
which
Yeah.
really.
Did they show that with them?
Well, did you see?
Oh, right, they did.
Hello, I don't
No.
even have to tell me.
Because I
It's
think
like-
that's why Zac Efron looked the way he did. I thought, oh yeah, see, to me, I just immediately said, oh yeah, he's on steroids.
But
kind
I'm
of
just
thing.
saying the wrestle-
not Zac Efron, the actor, but the character. They made him look steroids.
But they
in a way,
in
yeah.
And they
that
did a
time
good
they
job.
they all took steroids.
Mhm.
They had to take steroids. Do you know what I mean? It was like normal. Everybody in that business. So yeah, so I think that had a lot
Yeah.
to do with the emotionalism and
Right, the over.
the over intensity because
That, yeah,
personally
macho
I don't
steroid
think
use,
their
yeah.
parents were much different than anybody else who wants their kid to be a lawyer or because the family's lawyers or the family they just wanted him in the family business and I just thought that at that time they're like kind of poor people,
But
right?
also, like I was telling you in the movie, like the scene where the Carrie is gonna go to the Olympics, and I guess in the U.S.
Right.
is not to go. It's like, can this family catch a break?
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah, that
No,
Yes.
very much so.
But one point you made about the father being from a different generation.
Yeah.
The one that where you really see is when they're all eating in the patio thing, and that's when I think Carrie was fighting or Cameron was fighting, but he's talking about the youngest son is talking about all the great camera angles, all the great cameras, eh?
Yeah.
And the father, who cares about the camera angles? It's it was the wrestling match and whatever.
Well,
But that's what I say, different generation because now it's all about the camera angles. That's
Right.
what sells.
Exactly.
It's all visual medium. So
Right.
now they got cameras on your nostrils.
Yeah.
So he was different generation. He didn't see that's where he's headed.
Right. He-
Become a multi-billion-dollar industry.
And I will say this too. I give it to them because you could tell they were doing all their own fighting and stunts kind of thing. I mean, as most actors do now. And whenever people do wrestling movies, I always hand it to the actors who have to do that physicality.
Oh,
Because I thought
absolutely.
they did an incredible
Well,
job.
I'll tell you something. I worked on a wrestling movie, and when I was working on it, it was a thing about women wrestlers, and they
That's
were
all the
working in the
marbles,
ring.
right?
Yeah, they had the ring. Now, when you hit one of those the rings, you bounce up about 5 feet. They're so loose, that it just looks and sounds like it's like a lot worse than it is. But it's like.
Oh, but still, I'm sorry. There's a physicality to that. I
Yeah,
think
no,
I could
but
do
I
it.
mean,
Especially
it's like
wrestling.
dancing. It's like a choreographed
Oh, very
thing.
much
So
so.
it's like
Very
dancing.
much like that. Yeah.
but less, well, maybe not.
But
So-
there is all those steroids and boys, and people do get pissed off, and people do hurt each other. They're not supposed to.
See,
but
that's an
they
amazing
do.
thing about how
The
much the
adrenaline.
audience believes it. Because I remember, I mean, it was so hokey when I was young. There was a guy. It was on like a local channel in New York, and there was a guy named Dennis James who I knew because he hosted some game shows. He was the original guy who was like the announcer for wrestling. And when he'd get those guys down to talk to them, he would make sure he'd get right between them so he could get a fight started. And they were punching each other over him. And you knew the whole thing was staged. And yet some nut would come out of the audience with a
Yeah,
folding
you will see
chair
that.
and smash somebody on the head.
Yeah.
In fact, there is one where I've seen some footage with a wrestler where it's two well-known wrestlers, and then a man comes out of the audience, and one wrestler pins the other one, and starts punching that wrestler. So the wrestler that's on the floor gets up and starts beating up the guy, and they both now the two wrestlers are beating the crap out of the guy, and even the ref is kicking the guy and taking him out. And now we're gonna go back to the wrestling. See, he was like this. It's up.
It was really so entertaining in a way. Now, when I look back at it, it was like it was what was on when I wanted to watch other stuff. But I look back on it now and I say it was really funny because they had to. It was obvious. It was so obviously staged. Like the big guy at the time was a guy named Antonino Rocco, who you look at now and you say he's like a pipsqueak, but he was like the number one wrestler around. Then there was a guy named Haystacks Calhoun who weighed
I
about
remember him,
600
that
pounds.
name, yeah.
And would wrestle in coveralls.
Right.
And his whole thing was he'd throw a guy on the ground, lie on top of him,
And sit-
and he'd
yeah.
win.
Exactly.
And then and there was another thing. There was a thing called the step over toe hold. I remember they had these names. They were midget wrestlers.
Oh, I remember all this.
There was a guy from Canada named Sky Low. Do you guys remember him? He was he dressed up
No.
like an Indian. He was a little person, but back then it was called midget wrestling.
Right.
So they were celebrities like that. And then and the female equivalent of it then was roller derby.
Right.
Sure, I remember
we-
roller derby.
Should we?
Yeah. So I guess it would be. Oh, you don't. You don't.
You don't
Think
rate.
it was
don't
much
rate.
better than I thought it was going to be. 7.
8.
I give it a 5.
Of course you did.
That's a big high rating for him.
Okay, so
Be back.
we'll be back next week.